We were doing a combate show, and one of the fighters wins. He jumps the cage, runs over to the Univision announce desk, and rips one of the headsets off the talent.
Today's guest is a force behind the scenes of live television and music. Art Izquierdo is a director, producer, and consultant whose career spans decades, from World Cups and Miss Universe to concerts with Gloria Estefan, Mark Anthony, Bad Bunny, and Los Temerarios. He even directed Selena at the Houston Astrodome, a defining moment in music history. Art, welcome to Creative Hub Talk. So to me, it's important to hear about your dad was here, your mom is here. You were born here?
I was born here 3 months after my mother got here. Yeah, she was on a plane, 6-7 months pregnant. And when she was here, my father had bought an old Oldsmobile. She fell out of the car, and I was born the next day. And that explains a bunch of things. Literally explains a bunch of things.
So you came out early. You were ready.
I came out early, and I came out jodiendo with an impact. I caused by an impact. But, you know, we were poor, but I never felt poor, which I think is a story of a lot of people. I didn't know what I didn't have. I knew what I had, which was love and a family that supported me. Even when I decided not to be a doctor and go into television, I got the support I wasn't expecting. I was expecting to be scolded. And my dad looked at me and said, whatever you do, you better love it or you're going to be miserable the rest of your life.
Great.
And that was, to me, you know, I haven't worked a day in my life.
So tell me about your dad. You know, you always post on Instagram when you're the anniversary of your mom. Every once in a while you post something about your dad.
Yeah.
Those are important people.
Yeah, you know, in my house, in the walk-in closet, there's 3 pictures, and it's of my dad, my mother, and my sister. And I'm actually like 1 year old in one of them. And I always get dressed in front of those pictures because it reminds me where I came from. And my wife asked me, why do you always get dressed in front of those? Because I look up and I remember where I came from. Because my dad was part of the Batista government. He was actually in charge of his security detail. And on December 31st, 1958, the U.S. ambassador walked into the presidential palace where they were having a party, said, you got to go now. And Batista knew that moment was coming, but my dad had no idea. So he made a phone call home, told my mom, don't go back to the house. She was at her mom's house because she was pregnant with me, and told my brother to go get whatever money was in the safe and a gun and never go back to the house.
Mm.
So months later, my mother left for the United States with a CIA operative who was a friend of my dad's, who was pretending to be her husband. And my siblings left with another family. Mm. Everybody had false documentation. Mm-hmm. And then they got to Miami. Mm. And, you know.
When you came here, do you know when they came here on their own? Did you have family here already? They had to start from the beginning?
We were poor, but we never felt poor. There was a lot of love. There was a lot of people.
Yeah.
Everybody was always coming in. They'd spend 2 or 3 months here, then they'd go. So, you know, and I miss that because as we became more of the American culture and our economic status went up and we started having money, we lost that closeness. Every part of the family became their own niche in their own area.
I ask you this because to me, you know, we've worked together. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be where I'm at. You brought me into WLTV. We were working at Dynamic Cable. We had a great time there.
It was awesome.
Right on the University of Miami campus.
Let's not tell those stories.
We had a great time. But when we worked together, when I worked for you, there was always that camaraderie. And as I got older and you started telling me, you know, you were telling me about your dad and your mom, and I see what you're doing with honoring your parents on Instagram, you know, that's where you start.
Totally.
That's who you are. And you've made a difference in so many people's lives.
Thank you.
Now, how did you get into television?
It was really an accident. My sister lived in Puerto Rico, and her best friend's husband was the general manager of Channel 2 in Puerto Rico. So the ladies decided to go to the beauty parlor, and they dumped me with his 2 kids at his house. And he had an emergency. And he took us to Channel 2, and he left us in the studio for an hour while he dealt with the emergency. And the camera guys started teaching us how to run cameras and play with cameras. And that's when it all started. And then coming out of high school, I went to Miami-Dade and I met your father.
Yes.
And I walked into his class, and his personality was very, very large, and it was great. And he wasn't always the conventional teacher. And I said, wow, I think I can really like doing this. And that's what it started. And my dad wanted me to be a doctor, and I didn't want to be a doctor. When I saw my first dead body, I almost passed out. They took us to the morgue, and I just, this is not for me.
Why were you at the morgue?
Because,
A class or?
yeah, a class.
A class.
There was a morgue at Miami-Dade Community College.
Yes, I remember.
And they took us there, and I saw the dead body and went, oh no, no, I am not doing this. So I went home and I told my mother that I wasn't going to do this. And she goes, your dad's going to kill you. He wants a doctor in the family. So I sat down, and I remember he was watching The Price is Right. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. He was in a walk. He just retired. He's in his rocking chair. And he goes, what do you want to do? You want to be in television? You want to be an actor? I go, no, I want to be a director. He goes, do they make money? I said, it's not about the money. It's I think I want to do this. And he goes, okay, whatever you want to do, make sure you love it, because the worst thing you can do in this world is go to a job you hate, because you'll be miserable all your life.
Still like it?
Love it. I love the people. That's, the corporations, I did my time in a corporation with you, and it was great. It was the best school I could ever have. I made relationships that have lasted me forever, hence us and many other people. But I like the creative side. It's what I started for. And somewhere along the way, life took me in another direction. And it was great. I have no complaints. It was amazing. But I like what I'm doing now. And, I think I'm better suited for what I'm doing now.
So what is it that you do? What do you do now?
Well, I watch people beat the hell out of each other, and then I make them look normal. I do a lot of combat sports. I do a lot of combat sports. I do some music still, which is where we started doing music, and I love it. But I do a lot of combat sports. I do, I won't name the clients, but I do wrestling. I do bare knuckle boxing. I do boxing. I do bare knuckle MMA. Like I said, I watch people beat the hell out of each other, and then we interview them, make them look normal. I do MMA. And I like the fact that it's all live, and the margin for error is just almost non-existent. And I like that you never know what's going to happen. In a normal television, as you know, there's a rundown and you follow the rundown. In combat sports, the only thing you know is going to happen is that first segment. After that, things end in 20 seconds. I mean, anything can happen, and you have to adjust. And that's the adrenaline that I really like. And
the live TV.
It's the live TV. 2 years ago, I did Bad Bunny here, 19 cameras for Netflix, and kind of stumbled onto that show. I wasn't supposed to direct. I was supposed to be the TD. And they bought a film guy in to direct. And he
multi-camera.
He fell in love with one shot and wouldn't get off it. And by the end of the first night, they said, you can do this, go do it. And they told him, you can sit in the back and take edit notes. So I did the 3 nights, and I did Mark Anthony during COVID, which was really, really interesting because of all the things we had to go through and getting tested twice a day. And that concert crashed the internet. They were supposed to put it on a Saturday. It crashed the internet. People who paid for it couldn't see it, so they put it up for free. Awesome. And then right after Miss Universe 2 years ago, I had spent 3 weeks in Mexico. I come home and I get a phone call to do Los Temerarios' last show on their tour in Mexico City. And I really didn't want to go. I was tired of traveling. It was the end of the year. I didn't have any plans. I was going to go lay out in Colombia, the house, and not think of anything. So I asked them for every toy I could ever think of. I wanted 3 drones. I wanted 245 for cranes. I needed 3 Steadicams. And they said yes. So it's like, well, I guess I gotta do it.
Now you got to go.
I guess I got to go. And it was really cool to see their crowd and their reaction after 40 years.
What does music mean to you?
It is the soundtrack of just about everything. Everything from when I was a high school kid listening to Casey and the Sunshine Band and Earth, Wind and Fire, to this morning waking up and seeing Benny Mardones singing Into the Night on Instagram and thinking, where was I and what did that lyric mean to me at some point in life? A lot of my memories are attached to music. A lot of what we did at the beginning was attached to music. I mean, your producer goes to me, you really did Selena's show at the Astrodome? Yeah. And produced the tribute show with Bert as a director and Cisco Suarez as the other producer and Joshua Mintz. I don't want to leave anybody out.
Yep.
Because that's still the highest rated show in the history of Spanish television.
Yep. That was at
and
the
it was
Reliance
done in
Stadium.
2005.
I remember. That was a
And I
great
remember I looked at you and I said, we should retire after this. We're not going to beat it. We're not going to beat this. It's not going to get bigger than that. 90,000 people.
You were definitely passionate about the music. You wanted to make sure that the people at home saw what was happening on stage, not just the singer, right? Whether it was the instrument or the dancing, that music, and you have the beat, right? I mean, you had the beat, and we would always bop up and down, right? We would get into it. That music appreciation, do you still have it today, or is it more about the?
No, I still, look, you couldn't say that I'm a Bad Bunny fan, but I enjoyed every second of his performance. The choreography, the whether you agree with the messages or not, the way they were delivered, the choreography with the director. When I did Miss Universe.
What'd you do for Miss Universe?
I directed it.
Mm-hmm.
And
where?
In Mexico City, of all places.
Mm-hmm.
About 10 minutes before the show, I told my AD, leave me alone for 5 minutes. And I put some music on in my ears. And, the last song is something that's really crazy because it's the Backstreet Boys' Larger Than Life.
Mm.
And it's like, just gets into my mind, and then I turned around and said, okay, let's do the show. Let's go. So it's almost like a fighter walking out to hype music. And I still use, depending on the show, there's something that I play, 10, 20 minutes before. And if you remember in the old days, I never walked into the truck till 5 minutes before.
Mm-hmm.
I always left you and Lourdes and everybody in there, and I'd walk in right before because I don't like to think about what can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to get in there and do it. You said we used to bop our heads together. And one day I asked you, how come we rehearse it a certain way and I'm changing it? How do you know what camera I'm going to if I don't give you a ready? And you said, I look at your eyes. Because I may be here, so stand by one, I go over, and all of a sudden you realize that because you were directing it in your own mind, where I was going to next. And that's what it's all about is the teamwork. You could read my mind.
And you're editing live.
Yeah.
You're editing live.
That's what is the rush. I remember we did Premio Nuestro and we did a Ricky Martin number. And I get back to the office at Univision and I walk in the building and I knew we killed it. And I walked in there and I was walking on water. I was the man. I was it. And I walk into our old boss's office, Tony O'Ken. And he looks at me and he goes, you were amazing yesterday. You guys really nailed it. You did a great job. You did this, you did that. And my ego's, we're really going now. And he goes, but you forgot one thing. I go, what? And he crossed his legs and he was fixing his pants or his cufflinks because he was always perfect. And he goes, you forgot that women don't want to see the drummer on the beat. They don't want to see the dancer on the move. They want to see Ricky. You showed every director out there that you and your guys could really cut a song. But along the way, you forgot who your audience was.
Interesting.
And I walked away going, damn it, he's right. And I always try to keep that in mind now. Who is watching?
Who is watching? That's great.
And he taught me that lesson that day. It's like, who is watching?
That's great.
Because I did it for all of us. I didn't do it for the women at home watching.
Right. So, back in the day was one way. How's that role changed today?
Well, we're a lot more politically correct than before. The one thing that holds true from the 80s to now is it's all about teamwork. You're only as good as the people you work with. I remember every time I won an Emmy, the first person I thanked were my parents, the second were my crew. Because we all know that we can be great at what we do, but if we've got people who are not into what they're doing, not paying attention, and not focused, and now on their phones, which has happened. Miss Universe at the dress rehearsal, half my crew was on their phones, and nothing was coming right. Nothing was coming right. The tech manager walked in and goes, your crew's on the phone. I go, okay, cut. Walked out, got a big brown bag, said everybody put their phones in the bag. No, we're not doing it. Yes, you are. If you want to be in the show tonight, you're going to put your phones in the bag. And because you need everybody to be focused.
That's
and
right.
We didn't have the resources that maybe other broadcasters did, but we had everybody in a focus and everybody had a chip about proving we were as good as the other ones.
Well, I think that was also part of our mantra, right? You know, that group back then, we were all young, we were wanted to do this and we had a passion, but we had that general market mentality. We wanted to be just as good as general market,
Mhm.
and we achieved it. Even today, we still achieve it, right? Even the ratings on Univision today, sometimes we beat, not sometimes, we beat general market in ratings, right? So it's about the content, it's about the teamwork. I think that that's important.
And that's never changed.
It's never changed.
Technology's come in, it's come out. We used to use tape machines, we
Yeah.
use drives, we use computers, it's still about the teamwork. That's what I enjoy.
Yep. So you've worked on everything from World Cup to Miss Universe. Is there an event that really just gives you chills?
There's two, and they involve the same person, Selena Quintanilla.
Mm.
One was, it was not her last show, it was actually her next to last show. It was the Houston Astrodome show with the purple dress and that whole situation, because you could really tell she became a friend over the years, and she was a sweetheart, but you could tell she was on the brink of blowing up. And I remember,
Stress?
no, just blowing up.
Oh, blowing up internationally.
Internationally.
Got it.
And she played the English tracks she had done, and the vocals were rough tracks that she did in Los Angeles. And, you know, you could hear it and you could see how she was. You go, oh, this is going to blow up for this girl. But she was still the sweet girl who wanted to go out to the rodeo, wanted to go out to ride the fair rides at the rodeo. We tried it, lasted 5 minutes, had to run back in because the crowd mobbed her. And then the one was 10 years after her death when we did Reliance Stadium, because you could feel that all 23 or 24 artists that were in that concert. And I don't know if you remember the rehearsal when India sang her song and started crying at the end, and Selena's mom was crying. And during the show, you would take reaction shots of her parents. And her dad, her dad wasn't crying because he was a strong man.
Stoic.
He was stoic.
He just passed away, right?
Yeah.
He just passed away.
Actually, I had sent him a text message a month before. We stayed in contact a few times. And I wanted to take my granddaughter to Selena Museum, and I wanted him to run the tour. And he said, sure. Then I found out that after that, he went into a home and he wasn't doing well. Diabetes had pretty much killed him. You know,
so listen, you slipped in a word there. Your granddaughter.
Yeah.
Tell me about the family.
Well, my son, as you know, directs for Telemundo.
Yeah.
He worked with Univision for a while, and I tried to keep him out of this business.
They don't listen.
But they don't listen. And he has done great. I can't complain. He's done great. And I have to thank you and all the people who helped him at the beginning. You know,
and currently?
Currently married.
Yeah. How many?
Married. Number 6.
6, yeah.
Yes, you can leave that in. I'm proud of it. Currently 6. I have a grandson from my wife's side who's living with us temporarily, and he's great. I took him to the studio the other day because there was nobody to take care of him, and he looked at me and goes, "You can bring me back. I like this."
Oh, no.
No.
Oh, no.
I went, no. And I really shouldn't complain. It's been a great career.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it requires many times missing birthdays, missing anniversaries, and you know it.
Yep.
Because that's what your schedule is, and missing days.
Yeah.
And you pray to God that your children and your partners forgive you for those misses because they understand what you love.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been blessed that they have.
That's great.
And sometimes my son works a lot and I go, "You're working too hard." He goes, "I saw it all my life." You know, and the other day he couldn't come over for some reason. And my wife made a comment about it. And I go, I can't reprimand him. I did the same exact thing.
And what was the most stressful live event?
I'd say World Cup finals. Because, you know, the money was riding on it. If you blew a billboard, if you blew anything, there's no way to make it up.
There's a lot of money behind that.
That pressure of knowing that you can't make a mistake, and you could have had 63 great games. You screwed that last one up, and you're going to be remembered by screwing the last one up.
Was there one that came close to being a disaster?
Probably Japan, Korea.
World Cup.
Yeah, that was probably Japan, Korea. The event in itself, the language barrier was pretty tough with a lot of the technicians. Everybody did their best, but it was also most of the group that went to that one was doing the World Cup for the first time. Because you had gone on to being management
Mhm.
A lot of people had gone on in different directions. So the announcers were new, the producers, the crew, a lot of the crew was new. So it was just that always, I took some old guys with me, Tony Borboya and Dario Boronat,
Mhm.
and kind of counted on them to keep everybody in check. And when you're there, you know that in the middle there's a lull of energy where
Mhm.
you get into a routine and people are doing things automatically. Maybe they're not doing their best work,
Mhm.
but you have to expect that, but you also can't allow it to happen for long.
Mhm.
And the World Cup usually meant that we were away from home on Father's Day.
Mhm.
So I always made sure to, have a big party or whatever on Father's Day to include everybody, to make everybody not miss their families as much.
See, it goes back to your beginning, making sure that everyone's okay, making sure.
Yeah, because, I can tell you that I've had grown men stand in my office after 2 weeks and say, I miss my family. I want to go back home. And say, we can't do that,
Mm,
or I had a baby 3 months ago. I want to go back home. He says, we can't. We got 2 more weeks,
tough.
you know.
Got to
So,
motivate them.
yeah, so you got to find ways to motivate them. Um, and you also at the same time, you got to be sympathetic. And, over the years, I learned that, you got to try to allow them time to be themselves. You also got to allow people time to unwind.
If you're creating content in today's media landscape, speed, quality, and distribution all matter. That's where 55 Creative Hub comes in. A full-service production space built for creators, brands, and production teams, studios, post-production, global distribution, all under one roof. Focus on the idea and we will help you bring it to life. 55 Creative Hub. Ideas made real.
So I want to go back to Selena a second. What do you remember most about that day that you worked with him?
The one in Houston, I remember she wanted to wear the purple dress. Her father didn't want her to. And she had a little vest that came on top of the dress. And I looked at him and said, Abraham, she's going to have that vest on. She gets out. First song, she takes the vest and throws it into the crowd.
Mm.
And I'm like, ooh, there went that argument. He's going to kill me after this. Because he was very animate.
Yes.
He was very protective of her.
I remember.
And, it was just the looking at this young woman and saying there's something special about her. Didn't know what it was. I couldn't point to it. I couldn't, but it was just something about her. In Spanish, I say el ángel,
Mm-hmm.
that she had that was like, wow. And then after that show, she came to do Carnival Miami here,
Mm-hmm.
which was actually the last show she ever did. And, remember just talking to her in the back, and I was upset about something that was going on in my personal life. And she looked at me and said, Art, life's too short, man. Enjoy it. And that's the last thing she ever said to me.
Mm. Did she know she was about to break out?
She felt it. She felt it. The songs you hear in English,
Mm-hmm.
those were dummy tracks that she did for the engineers. She never got to go back and redo them, and they're spectacular. She knew it, and that was her dream.
So she was a friend of yours.
Yeah, she actually, when I married Lauri Flores, who used to be Univision Talent, she was my wedding band.
Mm.
She was actually the wedding. She played our wedding in Corpus Christi.
How did her passing affect you?
I remember that I was in my car on the way somewhere, and my assistant called me and said, you need to get back to Univision. Selena was just shot. And I pulled over off the Palmetto and just said, what? And we had just shot, we had the Houston Astrodome show, but it wasn't edited.
Mm.
And we had all the tracks that had been recorded, separate tracks to remix it. I want to get back to Univision. They say you got to have it ready by Sunday. But once it was done, I never was able to make sense of it for many reasons. Why she was there alone. If they knew there was something going to go wrong, why? Why? Why did this have to happen? She really never hurt anybody. She was a good kid. She was extremely talented. I remember her signing autographs for little girls and little girls dressed like her. And, that she was positioning herself to really do well. And all of a sudden, if you believe in God, you ask him, why the hell did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Make sense of it for me. And you don't get that sense.
You don't.
It's like, why?
So you worked with some huge stars, right?
So did you.
Yes.
Because you were sitting next to me.
Who was the most humble Who surprised you saying, wait a minute, I thought you were, something else?
Wow, I won't tell you who the nastiest ones were. But Gloria was always very humble, but that became a friendship over the years. And
That's right. You did. You worked with them for 2 music videos. One
for a couple of music videos, and then I went to Guantanamo once
That's
with
right.
her, and that's a whole other story. But
why? What happened?
At the time, I was under an exclusive services contract to Univision.
Oh yes.
And oh yes, you remember.
I remember now.
And I didn't clear it with my boss who was on vacation to go to Cuba. And when we land in Cuba at Guantanamo Bay, CNN's there with a camera. And when I call home that night, my wife tells me, oh, by the way, you looked really good on CNN. And I go, oh, great. She goes, and your boss called. He wants you in his office the moment you're back. So I took a 3-week suspension for that.
Have you ever had to protect an artist?
Yeah.
Vulnerability, something happened on stage.
We were doing a combate show, and one of the fighters wins. He jumps the cage, runs over to the Univision announce desks, and rips one of the headsets off the talent. And Lindsay Casinelli was sitting there, and I was in the studio, and sitting there, looks at me, and her face was sheer panic. And I had told him, you can't cuss. I read them the riot act before the show, as we normally did. Got to be careful what you do. And he started cussing. And I ran over there, and this guy's professional fighter, bigger than me, and my instinct was to grab him, literally, and said, you're coming with me. And when I turned around, my assistant producer, Javi, who probably weighed 130 pounds soaking wet, had grabbed him by the other arm. So we yank him. Security was on the other side, walking back in the ring, and I yell, Lupe, announce him as the winner. Security, remove him now. Because he had totally gotten out of control.
What does a countdown mean to you?
It's great, man. It's an adrenaline rush. When you hear 10, 9, 8, it's fasten your seatbelts, enjoy the ride. I'll say this. I don't know if you remember. Sometimes I'd say, guys, remember, it ain't brain surgery, but if you F up, it can get real messy. And now a lot of times I say, let's enjoy it. Make it memorable.
Did you ever feel burnt out? Ready to walk away?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, a couple of times. But things happen that remind you how much you love what you do. And when I left Univision in 2012, I had basically, and this is not Univision's fault, this is my fault. I'd become a robot. I was managing people more than doing creative. You do what you do, but you don't realize how unhappy you are till you're out of the situation. Once you get out, then you're like, oh, and you go back to realizing that you were burnt having to deal with producers who don't like directors who don't like producer, talent who doesn't want to work with this guy, talent who doesn't want to work, this talent who doesn't like this person because they're new and younger and better looking and may take their job. So you're not doing television. You're a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and an accountant. And I didn't study for that. I just kind of worked my way into that role.
Yeah.
And it was like,
I know that feeling.
Yeah. And once you're out there, it's like, oh, wow. And I was blessed that once I left, I got called by the Los Angeles Lakers. And I spent, 2.5 years on a plane with Kobe Bryant. And, God makes things happen in certain ways. I always knew I was good at what I did. But when I met Kobe Bryant, I realized I didn't work hard enough.
Why is that?
Because I saw how hard he worked. It's the first one in practice, the last one out. I saw his passion for what he did. And it regenerated that passion in me by watching him. And I told him, I got to thank you for something that you don't even know you did. You did this for me.
So what personal sacrifice does this career demand that people don't usually talk about?
It demands, like I said before, missing the important moments to other family members that you may never get back and you hope they forgive you for.
Yep.
You go into work at 8 a.m. and, it's 1 a.m. and you're still there and you haven't called home all day.
Yeah.
And you get home and they look at you like, we exist. A large part of the success is having people who understand you and who are willing to let you chase your dream and pursue it. and many times put themselves second to what you're doing. And that's not easy for anyone to do. And when you're young, it's really hard. When you get older, I think it's easier to understand.
What does success mean to you now? Are you successful?
I would tell you that I am, because if when I was 15 years old, you would have told me that I'd been to over 90 countries, that I would have 6 Emmys, that I have a Mitchell Wilson Media Award, that I've had friends in so many different places and I never even thought I'd visit because of television, I'd say, yeah, I'm successful and I'm at peace with myself. I kid about how tough this career is, that I didn't want my kids to do it. It can be nasty. We both know it. There's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes that aren't pleasant, and you lose a lot of friends along the way. Sometimes you gain them back.
What are you most proud of?
That's a tough question, Bert.
A little bit of everything?
Yeah.
Where you're at today?
Yeah. What I'm most proud of is that this business will knock you on your ass every once in a while. And I always manage to get back up. I don't know how sometimes. I don't know how, but to get back up and keep going at it. And I think I got that from the immigrant parents that, would get knocked down and just keep going. My dad said, don't complain, nobody cares. And I don't, because nobody gives a shit. It's the reality. Nobody does. And I think I'm more proud of that, being able to roll with the punches for X amount of years. And, somebody the other day said if I should retire or not, I have a tattoo on my arm that says, not today. And that's my response, not today. The day I stop loving it, or the day I can no longer do it.
What are you looking forward to? Are you just taking it day by day? Is there a time? Do you see yourself like retiring?
Yeah, I do, but it's just winding my workload down, not eliminating it all. My family has suffered from Alzheimer's and dementia, and it's always really hit people when they retire. So I realize that I've got to keep my mind busy. And a lot of times, having 4 or 5 clients having 4 events in the same week is insanity. But I know my mind's busy. I know my mind's busy. I write things down now that I didn't write before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see slowing down, but I don't see calling it quits.
How do you want people to remember you? Once you slow down, you're doing something else, what's it going to be to say, hey, Art did that?
What I really would desire, and I think with old age, I was very difficult when I was young. I was a bit of a diva. And you know that. I could raise a storm better than anybody could. But I want people to remember the person who cared about what he did, but not at the expense of the people around him. Not at the expense of those around me. Because some people just push it to a point. And to me, the people are more important than, and it took a while to learn. But the people are more important, the people in our business.
I want to thank you for coming in. I wish you much happiness. That brings us to the end of today's episode of Creative Hub Talk. Thanks for spending your time with us and being part of the conversation. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone in your creative circle. This was Creative Hub Talk, voices that move media.